an original story narrated exclusively for love written in silence. Marianne stands at the edge of the ballroom, one hand frozen on a white rose, the other pressed against her ribs as though to hold her heart in place. The Duke's voice carries from the alcove, casual, thoughtless, devastating. She is never the one, never was, never could be. The music continues. 200 guests waltz in golden candlelight, unaware that something has shattered. Lord Pemberton's face stiffens with discomfort, but the Duke does not turn, does not see his wife's stillness, the way her breath has stopped. Marianne releases the rose with careful precision, smooths the silk of her gown, and walks toward the stairs with a dignity so absolute it could be mistaken for composure. But her hand trembles against the banister, and the world she has built, quietly, invisibly, for 7 years, begins to collapse without a sound. Hartmere House stands in the fading light of an autumn evening, its limestone facade catching the last amber glow before dusk settles over the Kentish countryside. The windows are tall and many, reflecting clouds that move slowly across a sky turning the color of old silver. Inside, the rooms are vast and impeccably maintained, polished marble floors, portraits of ancestors whose names Marianne has memorized, but whose blood she does not share, furniture arranged with the kind of precision that suggests no one ever sits carelessly. Marianne, Duchess of Hartmere, moves through these rooms with a grace that has become second nature. Her skirts whisper against the stone as she passes from the drawing room to the library, pausing to straighten a cushion that was already straight, to adjust a vase of late roses that needed no adjustment. She does this not out of nervousness, but out of habit, the habit of a woman who has learned that her presence is most valued when it leaves no trace of effort. The house honors her, the servants bow, the housekeeper consults her on every detail, but the rooms do not feel hers. They feel like a museum she has been hired to curate, beautiful and cold, and utterly indifferent to whether she remains. Their marriage has a rhythm, and it is this: breakfast taken separately, the Duke preferring to read the morning papers in solitude, while Marianne takes tea in the smaller parlor overlooking the garden. Correspondence managed in parallel silence, he in his study, she in hers, their decisions flowing past each other like streams that never quite converge. Public appearances, performed with seamless precision, the two of them moving through county dinners and parliamentary receptions, with the synchronized grace of dancers who have rehearsed the steps so many times they no longer need to look at each other. It is a marriage that functions perfectly, because neither of them asks for more. The Duke arrives late from London on this particular evening, his carriage pulling up to the front steps just as the lamps are being lit. Marianne hears the sound of horses, the low murmur of the footman greeting him, the heavy tread of his boots in the entrance hall. She is in the drawing room, reviewing a letter from the vicar regarding the harvest festival, and she does not rise. She has learned that he prefers not to be met with expectation. He enters a few minutes later, still in his traveling coat, his cravat slightly loosened. He is a handsome man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair beginning to silver at the temples and eyes the color of slate. There is a weariness in his face that was not there when they married, a tightness around his mouth that suggests he carries burdens he does not share. "Good evening," Marianne says, setting the letter aside. Her voice is pleasant, modulated, empty of anything that might be called warmth or coldness. It is simply polite. "Good evening." He does not look at her as he crosses to the sideboard and pours himself a glass of brandy. "How was your day?" "Uneventful." "The vicar has requested our attendance at the festival. I've sent word that we will be there." "Good." He drinks, still not meeting her eyes. Parliament was tedious. The usual squabbling over land reform. "I see." She folds her hands in her lap, waiting to see if he will offer more. The silence stretches, filled only by the faint crackle of the fire and the distant sound of a maid's footsteps in the hall above. "Will you be staying long?" she asks, because it is expected. "A few days. There's a vote next week I must return for." "Of course." He finishes his brandy and sets the glass down with a soft clink. "I'll be in my study. Don't wait dinner for me." "As you wish." He leaves. She watches him go, noting the set of his shoulders, the way he moves through the house, as though it is an extension of his will, every door opening at his approach, every servant stepping aside. He does not thank them. He does not need to. This is his world, and they are its mechanisms. Marianne returns to the vicar's letter, but she does not read it. Instead, she watches the firelight play across the page, the shadows shifting and lengthening as the evening deepens. Outside, the sky has gone dark, and the first stars are beginning to appear. The house is warm, well lit, filled with every comfort wealth and position can provide, and Marianne sits alone, surrounded by beauty, feeling nothing. Morning finds Marianne in her private study, a smaller room on the second floor that overlooks the eastern gardens. The light here is softer, filtered through lace curtains, and the space is filled with the things she has chosen herself. A writing desk of polished walnut, shelves lined with books she has actually read, a small painting of the sea that reminds her of summers spent in her childhood home before duty called her elsewhere. She is reviewing the household accounts, her pen moving steadily across the ledger as she notes expenditures, approves payments, makes small corrections in the margins. The work is meticulous, unglamorous, and entirely hers. The Duke never asks to see these books. He trusts that the house runs smoothly, and it does, because Marianne ensures it. But her attention is not on the accounts today. Beside the ledger is a stack of letters from tenants, requests for repairs, petitions for leniency on overdue rents, a plea from a widow whose husband died in a farming accident and who now faces eviction. Marianne reads each one carefully, her expression growing more thoughtful with each page. There is a proposed eviction list on her desk, prepared by the estate steward and awaiting the Duke's signature. She picks it up, scans the names, and her pen hovers over one entry, the widow. A woman with 3 children and no means of support. The steward has noted that she is 4 months behind on rent and shows no prospect of catching up. Marianne sets down the list and writes a separate note in her own hand, suggesting that the widow be given an extension and offered work in the estate laundry to help her meet her obligations. She does not sign the note. She will leave it on the Duke's desk later, tucked beneath other documents, so that when he reviews it, he will assume the idea was his own. She has done this 100 times, 1,000. Small interventions, invisible corrections. The quiet work of ensuring that Hartmere's reputation for fairness is not merely a reputation. There is a soft knock at the door, and a young maid enters, bobbing a curtsy, begging your pardon, your grace. But I wanted to thank you. Marianne looks up, her pen pausing. For what, Anne? For speaking to the steward about my brother. He was to be let go after that business with the broken plow. But the steward changed his mind, said it was the Duke's kindness. But I know it was you, ma'am. The girl's eyes are bright with gratitude, her hands twisting in her apron. My family won't forget it. Marianne feels a small, sharp ache in her chest, but her expression does not change. It was the Duke's decision, Anne. I merely passed along the information. Still, ma'am, we're grateful. When the girl leaves, Marianne sits very still, staring at the ledger without seeing it. She thinks of all the times she has deflected gratitude, redirected credit, ensured that the Duke's name is the one associated with mercy. It has never bothered her before. It was simply the way things were done. But today, for reasons she cannot name, it feels like erasure. A memory surfaces, unbidden. Her wedding day, 7 years ago. She had stood in her father's study, dressed in ivory silk, while he adjusted her veil and spoke in the low, serious tone he reserved for matters of importance. You are marrying a man of great influence, Marianne. He will need you, though he may never say so. You will be the conscience he does not know he needs. It is not a small thing. To shape a man's legacy from the shadows. She had nodded, believing him. She had thought it noble, this idea of invisible influence. She had thought it would be enough. That night, alone in her chambers, Marianne stands before the mirror and studies her reflection. She is 30 years old, still handsome, though there is a tightness around her eyes that was not there in her youth. Her hair is pinned with care, her gown elegant and understated. She looks like a duchess. She looks like a woman who has everything, but when she searches her own eyes, she does not find the woman she thought she would become. She finds only the dutiful shadow she has been, the careful architect of someone else's grace. She turns away from the mirror and extinguishes the lamp. letting the darkness settle around her like a familiar weight. The grand ball at Hartmere House is an event anticipated by the entire county, and tonight the house has been transformed into something out of a dream. Golden candelabras line the walls of the ballroom, their flames casting a warm, flickering light over the assembled guests. Silk gowns in shades of emerald and sapphire and deep wine-red sweep across the polished floor as couples move through the waltz, their movements synchronized to the string quartet playing in the gallery above. The air is rich with the scent of hothouse flowers, white roses and lilies arranged in towering displays, and the murmur of 200 voices blends into a sound like distant surf. Marianne moves through the room with practiced grace, her own gown a pale gold that catches the candlelight with every step. She greets the wives of ministers and members of parliament, asks after their children, compliments their jewels, ensures that every guest feels welcomed and seen. This is her role, and she performs it flawlessly. The Duke is elsewhere, deep in conversation with a cluster of lords near the terrace doors, and she does not interrupt. She knows better. The evening progresses in a blur of music and laughter, and the clink of crystal. Marianne dances twice, once with an elderly baron who steps on her toes, once with a young MP who blushes and stammers through the entire set. She smiles, makes light conversation, and when the dances end, she excuses herself and drifts toward the edge of the room, seeking a moment of quiet. She pauses near an alcove by the terrace doors, where a large arrangement of white roses has been placed on a marble pedestal. One of the blooms has come loose from its position, and she reaches out to adjust it, her fingers brushing the cool, velvety petals, and then she hears his voice. The Duke is standing just beyond the alcove, partially hidden by a column, a crystal glass in his hand. He is speaking to Lord Pemberton, a man Marianne knows slightly, a political ally, someone whose support the Duke values. Their voices are low, but not low enough. The music from the ballroom is softer here, the murmur of guests more distant, and every word carries with perfect clarity. "You're fortunate, Hartmere," Pemberton is saying. "A wife of good family, a household run with precision. It's more than many men achieve." The Duke's reply is casual, almost dismissive. "She is suitable. I cannot fault her competence, but not a love match, I take it." There is a pause, and then the Duke's voice again, thoughtful, as though he is considering the question for the first time. "She is never the one, never was, never could be. A suitable match, nothing more." Marianne's hand freezes on the white rose. Her breath catches in her throat, a sharp, sudden pain that she cannot name. The world around her continues, music swelling, guests laughing, the clink of glasses. But it is all very far away, as though she is hearing it from the bottom of a well. She does not cry. She does not gasp or stumble. She simply stands there, one hand on the rose, the other pressed against her ribs, as though to hold something inside that is threatening to break loose. Lord Pemberton shifts uncomfortably, his gaze flickering toward the alcove. He has seen her. His face stiffens, and he opens his mouth as though to speak, to warn the Duke. But Marianne shakes her head, a single small movement. "Do not." The Duke does not turn. He takes a sip of his drink, entirely unaware. Marianne releases the rose with careful precision, smooths the silk of her gown, and walks slowly toward the stairs. Her steps are measured, unhurried. She nods to a passing guest, murmurs something polite to a dowager who touches her arm in greeting. No one would guess that anything is wrong. No one would know that the ground beneath her feet has just given way. She reaches the staircase and begins to climb, her hand resting lightly on the banister. The music fades behind her, replaced by the sound of her own breathing, the rustle of her skirts, the distant echo of her footsteps on marble. She does not look back. Upstairs, in the quiet of her chambers, she stands by the window and looks out over the gardens, where lanterns have been strung between the trees for the guests who wander outside. The light is soft, golden, beautiful, and Marianne feels nothing but the cold, hollow ache of a truth she can no longer ignore. She has spent 7 years building a life in which she is never the one. The morning after the ball, the Duke comes down to breakfast, expecting to find Marianne already at the table, as she usually is on the rare occasions they take the meal together. But the chair across from him is empty, the place setting untouched. He glances at the footman. Where is the Duchess? Her Grace is unwell this morning, Your Grace. She has taken tea in her chambers. The Duke frowns slightly, but he does not press. It is not unusual for Marianne to be tired after an event of that scale. He returns to his newspaper, dismissing the matter. But Marianne is not unwell. She is sitting in her study, fully dressed, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the morning light as it filters through the curtains. She has not slept. She has not cried. She has simply sat, turning the Duke's words over and over in her mind until they have lost all meaning and become only sound. She is never the one. When the maid brings her tea, Marianne thanks her and sends her away. She does not drink it. She simply sits, breathing slowly, letting the silence settle around her like a cloak. And then, with great deliberation, she makes a decision. She will not leave. She will not weep or rage or demand explanations. She will not create a scandal or embarrass herself, or give the Duke the satisfaction of knowing he has wounded her. She will simply stop. Over the following days, the change is so subtle that at first the Duke does not notice. Marianne continues her duties. She oversees the household, attends to correspondence, appears at dinner when required. But there is a new distance in her manner, a coolness that is not anger, not coldness, but something far more unsettling, indifference. She no longer intercepts his harsher decisions. When the estate steward brings her a proposed eviction, she does not write a note suggesting leniency. She simply sets it aside and says, "That is for the Duke to decide." A tenant is denied relief for a failed harvest. Marianne hears of it from the housekeeper and says nothing. A young housemaid is dismissed for breaking a vase. Marianne, who would once have intervened, offers no objection. The Duke signs documents she once would have quietly revised, letters she would have softened, decisions she would have redirected. Now, they go out exactly as he wrote them, unfiltered and untempered. He begins to feel the shift, though he cannot name it. When he speaks to her, she responds with flawless courtesy, but she offers nothing beyond what is required. No observations, no suggestions, no small moments of shared understanding. She is present, but absent, polite, but unreachable. One evening, he finds her in the drawing room, embroidering by the fire. He stands in the doorway for a moment, watching her, and realizes with a strange unease that he cannot remember the last time they had a conversation that was not purely functional. "Marianne," he says, stepping into the room. She looks up, her needle pausing. "Yes. Are you well?" "Quite well, thank you. You seem distant." She considers this, her expression perfectly serene. "I am merely allowing you full autonomy, as you clearly prefer." The words are civil, but her eyes, once warm with patient understanding, are distant, unreachable. She returns to her embroidery, and the Duke is left standing there, feeling as though he has been dismissed without a single discourteous word. He retreats to his study, unsettled in a way he cannot articulate. The house is the same. Marianne is the same. And yet something has changed, something fundamental, and he does not know how to name it. The silence between them is no longer comfortable. It is a wall, built not of stone but of absence, and he is only beginning to realize that he cannot see over it. 3 weeks pass, and the Duke begins receiving complaints from the county, letters from tenants, visits from the vicar, murmurs at gatherings he attends. His decisions, once considered firm but fair, are now described as harsh. His correspondence, once noted for its tact, now strikes recipients as cold. He is baffled. He has changed nothing. He is the same man he has always been. His steward, a graying man named Whitmore, approaches him one afternoon in the estate office, his expression carefully neutral. "Your Grace, I must bring a matter to your attention." The Duke looks up from the ledger he is reviewing. "What is it?" Several families in the lower parish are in distress over recent rulings. The widow Thompson, in particular. She was evicted last week and has nowhere to go. She was 4 months behind on rent. The decision was sound. "Forgive me, Your Grace, but in the past, such cases were handled with more flexibility. An extension, perhaps, or an offer of work to help meet the obligation." The Duke frowns. "I do not recall handling such cases differently." Whitmore hesitates, then says carefully, "Perhaps Her Grace might have." "Her Grace has nothing to do with estate management." "Of course, Your Grace." But the seed of doubt has been planted. That evening, The Duke sits in his study and reviews recent correspondence, letters to tenants, responses to petitions, formal communications with other estates. His tone, he realizes with creeping unease, has indeed grown sharper, but he cannot explain how. He has written the same words he always has, hasn't he? A visit from the vicar a few days later deepens his disquiet. Reverend Alcott is a mild-mannered man, not given to confrontation, but he arrives at Hartmere House with a troubled expression and asks to speak with the Duke privately. They sit in the library, and Alcott begins gently. "Your Grace, I come with a request on behalf of the Thompson family. I understand the widow has been evicted, and I wonder if there might be room for reconsideration." The Duke's jaw tightens. "The decision was made according to the terms of the lease, of course. But mercy, Your Grace, is also within your purview. I am not in the business of coddling those who cannot meet their obligations." Alcott's expression does not change, but there is a sadness in his eyes that makes the Duke uncomfortable. "Forgive me, but this is not the man I have known you to be. You have always been just, but also compassionate. I have not changed." "Then perhaps something else has." The vicar leaves, and the Duke is left alone with a question he does not want to answer. He begins to notice details he has overlooked. Marianne's study door, once open during the hours she spent reviewing household matters, is now always closed. The stack of documents on his desk, which he always assumed were prepared by Whitmore, bears small corrections in a hand that is not the steward's, unsigned notes in the margins. Suggestions phrased so carefully that he had believed them to be his own thoughts. He opens a drawer in his desk and finds a sheaf of drafts, letters he wrote months ago, covered in her handwriting, softening a harsh phrase here, adding a word of encouragement there, turning blunt refusals into thoughtful compromises. The realization comes slowly, and then all at once. The man the world believed him to be was a fiction she had carefully maintained. One evening, he seeks her out in the garden, where she is walking alone in the fading light. She does not turn when he approaches, but she does not walk away either. "Marianne, Your Grace, I need to speak with you." "Of course." Her tone is pleasant, empty. "Are you unwell?" "I have already answered that question." "Then why have you changed?" She stops walking and turns to face him, her expression calm. "I have not changed. I have simply stopped doing what I was never asked to do." "I don't understand." "No," she says quietly. "I don't suppose you do." He feels a flash of frustration, then something deeper, something closer to fear. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." The word is soft, final. "I want it to be seen." "But you cannot give what you do not have." She walks away, and he does not follow. That night, he sits alone in his study, surrounded by papers that bear her invisible hand, and realizes with a sickening clarity that he has been living in a house built by someone else. The grace, the compassion, the thoughtfulness that others attributed to him, they were never his, they were hers, and now they are gone. A formal dinner at Hartmere House brings together a small group of political allies, men whose support the Duke needs for an upcoming vote in Parliament. Marianne attends, as is expected, dressed in a gown of deep blue silk, her manner as composed as ever. She sits at the far end of the table, speaking when spoken to, smiling at the appropriate moments, a perfect ornament to the Duke's ambitions. The conversation turns to policy, to land reform, to the delicate balance of power among the lords. The Duke holds forth with his usual confidence, and the men around the table nod in agreement. It is Minister Caldwell, a sharp-eyed man with silver hair and a reputation for shrewd observation, who changes the tenor of the evening. He sets down his wine glass and addresses the Duke with a smile. "Your Grace, I must say, you speak far more gently in your letters these days. There is a warmth that was absent before." The Duke pauses, his fork halfway to his mouth. "I am pleased to hear it." Caldwell continues, oblivious to the sudden tension in the room. "It is remarkable how a man's voice can soften with time. Maturity, perhaps, or wisdom." "Perhaps," the Duke says, but his voice is strained. Marianne does not look up from her plate. Her expression is serene, unreadable. The comment lodges in the Duke's chest like a blade, and he cannot dislodge it. The rest of the dinner passes in a haze. He hears himself speaking, responding, but his mind is elsewhere, turning over Caldwell's words again and again. After the guests have departed, He retreats to his study and pulls open every drawer, every file, every stack of correspondence he can find. He compares drafts in his own hand with the final copies sent under his seal. And everywhere, he finds her corrections. Small changes that transformed blunt refusals into gracious compromises, harsh judgments into thoughtful considerations, coldness into warmth. The gentleness the world attributed to him was never his, it was hers. He sits in the dark, the papers scattered around him, and feels the full weight of what he has lost, not just her labor, though that would be devastating enough, but the illusion of himself, the man he believed he was, the man others believed him to be. That man never existed. The devastation is silent and total. There is no one to witness it, no one to hear the sound of his pride cracking open like ice underfoot. He sits alone, and for the first time in his life, he understands what it means to be truly humbled. The Duke begins attempting repair in the only language he knows. Gestures, gifts, concessions. He orders a string of pearls sent to Marianne's chambers, each one flawless and gleaming. She thanks him politely and places them in a drawer, unopened. He offers her control of additional estate matters, oversight of the tenants, authority over household expenditures. She declines with serene grace, suggesting that such decisions are his to make. He proposes a trip to Bath, thinking perhaps a change of scenery will ease whatever has come between them. She thanks him and says she prefers to remain at Hartmere. Each refusal is delivered with perfect courtesy, and each one cuts deeper than anger ever could. He grows frustrated, then desperate. One afternoon, he finds her in the garden, walking among the late autumn roses, and he abandons all pretense of dignity. "Marianne, please, tell me what you want. Tell me how to make this right." She stops walking and turns to face him, her expression calm, her eyes clear. "You cannot purchase what was never sold. I do not want gestures. I want to be seen. I see you." "No," she says quietly. "You see a function. You see the woman who keeps your house running, who smooths your mistakes, who ensures your reputation remains intact. But you do not see me. Then tell me who you are." She studies him for a long moment, and there is something in her gaze that makes him feel small. I should not have to. She walks away, and he is left standing among the roses, feeling the full weight of his ignorance. He realizes, with a sharp, painful clarity, that he does not know her, not her preferences, her fears, her desires. He does not know what she reads, what she dreams of, what she wanted before duty consumed her. She has been a function, not a person, and he has never thought to ask. That night, he cannot sleep. He walks the halls of Hartmere House, these rooms that have always felt like extensions of his own will, and sees them now as monuments to her invisible labor. The flowers arranged just so, the letters answered with care, the tenants who speak of him with gratitude he did not earn. It is a place haunted by his failures, and he is only beginning to understand the depth of what he has destroyed. A crisis emerges in the form of a letter delivered by courier one cold morning in late November. The Duke reads it in his study, his expression growing more troubled with each line. It is an offer, or rather, a summons, from a coalition of lords whose political support he has cultivated for years. They are proposing a pact, a piece of legislation that would consolidate land holdings across several counties, increasing efficiency and profit for the estates involved. It is a lucrative deal, one that would significantly expand Hartmere's influence and secure the Duke's position in Parliament for years to come. But there is a cost. The consolidation would require the displacement of dozens of tenant families, small farmers whose leases would be dissolved to make way for larger, more profitable operations. The families would be offered modest compensation, but it would not be enough to resettle elsewhere. They would be left adrift, landless, with nowhere to go. The Duke reads the terms twice, then sets the letter down and stares at it as though it might catch fire. A month ago, he would not have hesitated. The decision would have been simple. Political gain outweighs individual hardship. That is the way of the world. That is how power is maintained. But now he hesitates. He thinks of the widow Thompson, evicted and homeless, because he saw only the terms of a lease and not the woman behind it. He thinks of Marianne's quiet corrections, the way she turned his harshness into mercy without ever asking for recognition. He thinks of the man he believed himself to be, and the man he actually was. He stands and walks to the window, looking out over the estate grounds. In the distance, he can see Marianne walking along the eastern path, her cloak pulled tight against the wind. She stops to speak with a farmer's wife, bending slightly to hear the woman's words, her expression attentive and kind. She is graceful, unborrowed and entirely her own, and he realizes, with a clarity that is almost painful, that he has a choice. He can retain power by repeating the patterns that destroyed his marriage, or he can become the man she believed he could be. The decision, once made, is irrevocable. 3 days later, the Duke stands in the county hall, a large room filled with lords, landowners, and tenants, who have gathered to hear the announcement of the pact. The air is thick with anticipation, the murmur of voices rising and falling like the tide. The Duke takes the podium, and the room falls silent. He speaks clearly, his voice carrying to the back of the hall. I have been approached with a proposal to consolidate land holdings across this county. It is a proposal that would bring significant profit and influence to those involved. There is a ripple of approval among the lords, nods of satisfaction. But it is also a proposal that would displace dozens of families, hard-working people who have lived on this land for generations, and I cannot, in good conscience, support it. The room erupts. Voices rise in shock and anger and disbelief. His allies turn to him with expressions of betrayal, their faces tight with fury. "You are a fool, Hartmere," one lord hisses. "You are throwing away everything we have built." "Perhaps," the Duke says, "but I would rather be a fool than a man who profits from suffering." He steps down from the podium and walks through the crowd, which parts before him like water. Near the back of the room, he sees Marianne standing quietly, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. Their eyes meet across the distance, and he does not look away. She does not smile, she does not nod, but there is something in her gaze, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or the faintest softening of the wall she has built between them. It is not forgiveness, but it is not refusal either, and for now it is enough. Dawn comes slowly to Hartmere, the sky lightening from black to gray to the pale gold of early morning. Marianne wakes before the household stirs and dresses quietly, pulling on a simple woolen cloak and sturdy boots. She walks alone through the gardens, past the sleeping roses and the frost-covered hedges, toward the eastern edge of the estate, where a stone bridge spans a narrow river. The mist rises from the water in soft curls, and the air is cold enough that her breath forms small clouds. She stands at the center of the bridge, her hands resting on the rough stone, and watches the river flow beneath her. She does not hear the Duke approach, but she is not surprised when he appears at the far end of the bridge. He does not call out, does not intrude. He simply stands there, waiting. She glances at him, acknowledges his presence with a slight inclination of her head, but does not speak. He crosses slowly, his footsteps careful on the damp stone, and stops an arm's length away. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. The mist curls around them, and the river murmurs below, and the world is very quiet. "I did not come to ask for forgiveness," he says finally, his voice low. "I know I have no right to it." She does not reply, but she does not turn away. "I came to tell you what I have lost. Allies, political standing, the security I spent years building." He pauses, his jaw tight. "I did not do it to win you back. I did it because you taught me what justice looks like, even when I could not see you teaching it." Marianne's composure fractures slightly. She turns to face him fully, her eyes searching his. "Why did you never see me?" "I was there. I was always there." The question hangs in the cold air, and he does not flinch from it. "Because I was afraid. I thought distance was strength. I thought needing nothing made me whole." She studies him, and he does not look away. There is no performance in his expression, no calculation, only truth, raw and unadorned. "If I learn to see you now," he says quietly, "will you let me?" The mist curls around them, and the river flows beneath the bridge, steady and cold. Marianne does not answer immediately. She looks at him, really looks at him, searching for the man she married, the man she thought he could be, the man he is now trying to become. She steps forward, close enough that she can see the frost clinging to his coat, and she reaches out to adjust the collar, a small, deliberate gesture of care. "Not as your conscience," she says. not as your invisible hand, as your equal, as myself. He nods, and for the first time he takes her hand not as a formality, but as a man reaching for solid ground. They stand together on the bridge, the mist rising around them, and the world begins to wake. Weeks pass, and the estate settles into a quieter rhythm. The Duke and Marianne begin the slow work of rebuilding, not the marriage they had, but one they choose. They take walks together in the early mornings, before the household wakes. He asks her questions he never thought to ask: what she reads, what she hopes for, who she was before duty consumed her. She answers slowly at first, testing the waters, but gradually she begins to speak more freely, offering opinions without softening them, claiming space without apology. One afternoon in the library, they review correspondence together. A letter has arrived from a neighboring estate, requiring a formal response. The Duke begins to write, then pauses. He slides the pen across the desk to her. "Write what you think is right," he says. "Not in my voice, in yours." She hesitates, her fingers hovering over the pen. "You want me to sign it?" "I want you to write it as yourself. Sign your name first. I will sign beneath." She takes the pen, her hand steady, and writes. The words are clear, direct, unmistakably hers. When she finishes, she signs, "Marianne, Duchess of Hartmere." She slides the letter to him, and he reads it carefully, then nods and signs his own name beneath hers without alteration. It is a small thing, a single letter, but it is also everything. Evening settles over Hartmere House, and the drawing room is warm with firelight. Rain taps gently against the windows, a soft, steady rhythm that fills the silence. Marianne sits in a chair near the fire, a book open her lap. The Duke sits across from her, not reading, not working, simply present. He watches her, memorizing details he once overlooked. The way she tilts her head when concentrating, the faint smile that touches her lips when a passage pleases her. The way the firelight catches in her hair. She looks up, catches him watching, and raises an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "That I wasted years," he says, "living beside you without knowing you." "Then do not waste more," she replies, closing her book. He crosses to her and kneels beside her chair, not in supplication, but in equality, meeting her gaze at level. She touches his face, a gesture tender and deliberate, and he covers her hand with his own. No grand declarations, no melodrama, only the quiet recognition of two people choosing each other, finally, fully. She leans forward and kisses him, and it is not the polite kiss of duty or the empty gesture of performance. It is real, and it is theirs. Late evening, after the household has retired, Marianne and the Duke remain in the library. The candles burn low, casting long shadows across the shelves. She rises to leave, and he stands with her. They walk together through the darkened halls, not as Duke and Duchess performing roles, but as man and woman, still learning each other. At her door, she pauses. He does not assume entry, does not presume. He waits. She looks at him with clear eyes, free of doubt, and takes his hand. She opens the door, steps inside, and draws him gently with her. The door closes softly. The world outside continues, indifferent and unknowing. But inside, in the quiet of that room, two people begin again. A single candle burns in the window, its light steady and warm. Slowly, the flame dims as the wick consumes, and the room fills with darkness. Not the darkness of absence, but the darkness of rest, of peace, of two lives finally, quietly coming home. Morning will come. The mist will lift from the stone bridge. The river will flow steady and clear beneath, and Hartmere House, which has stood for so long as a monument to duty, will begin to feel like something else. A home, a partnership, a love that was not given, but chosen. Some loves are born in fire. Others are forged in the slow, deliberate work of becoming whole. Theirs was the latter, a love that required loss, humility, and the courage to be seen. And in the end, it was not the love they were given, but the love they chose to build.